So the original Santa Claus was Saint Nicholas. Even our Santa Claus today gets his name is
I think
Saint
most
Nick.
people know that. Yeah.
Yeah, or
As
Chris.
Saint Nick.
Actually, Chris Kringle,
Kringle,
is different. But the first gift giver was based off of a saint called Saint Nicholas. This is when people used to worship saints. His saint's day was December 9th, and as part of when Rome converted over to Christianity and people started worshiping saints, you might get some gift exchange around the time of Saturnalia, or you might get gift exchange depending on like what kind of crazy Christmas you have. As Jeremy pointed out, there's a lot of different types of ways that people celebrate this, and you do gift exchange in the name of Saint Nicholas.
Interesting.
Yeah, because to honor Saint Nicholas.
Because he started he's like the legend.
Yeah, he was a very
Christmas.
generous guy. So basically, Saint Nicholas was a 4th century Greek Christian bishop of Myra.
He was Greek?
Yeah,
Oh,
he was
wow.
Greek in Lycia. So he was famous for his generous gifts to the poor, in particular presenting 3 impoverished prostitutes dowries so that they wouldn't have to be prostitutes anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really generous.
That's what a guy.
So basically, he gave a lot of prostitutes money, and I think we can all learn something from him. So go out there and give some prostitutes some money.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. So children used to receive gifts in remembrance of St. Nicholas's deeds. Like parents would be like, here you go, Billy, here's a gift. It's like, why are you giving me this gift?
Because Saint Nicholas.
Yeah, because Saint Nicholas. Billy's an intelligent kid. It's just like, why are you giving me this gift, Papa?
Yeah.
Right?
He
And
wanted
you're
to
like,
know.
well, you're a really intelligent kid, let me tell you. Because Saint Nicholas. And then you tell the story of Saint Nicholas and how he's such a great guy for being so generous.
Yeah.
And then the kid would learn something.
Yeah.
I think
About
that's
actual
pretty
history.
good.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty wholesome.
Exactly. Later on, Martin Luther made up a different person to be the bringer of gifts around December 9th. You know,
Okay.
Martin Luther is that famous Reformation guy in England.
Yep.
And he made up a guy because I don't know that Saint Nicholas is made up or if a story is made up. Actually, Saint Nicholas might be the real deal, but Martin Luther definitely made up something. He wanted to replace Saint Nicholas, the legend, with this thing called a Christ kind.
That's interesting.
Yeah, a Christ kind.
Christ kind.
A Christ
This
kind.
is like the technical term for made up dude that represents Christ.
Yeah, like Christkind, right? So like
Okay.
so it's
Sounds
literally
like a marketing term.
it's literally baby Jesus.
Okay.
So little baby Jesus is actually coming around and like giving you gifts, and he's a cherub. He's kind of like Cupid, like the way that I imagine him is like Cupid.
This actually, people believe this for a while? Or is it a thing?
It didn't catch on. It didn't market very
I
well.
wonder why.
Yeah, exactly. Because because Saint Nicholas was a long established tradition.
Yeah.
So it didn't catch on as good as Saint Nick.
Yeah.
Right. So
okay.
Saint Nick. So
Maybe because Saint Nick was like legit.
yeah,
Like,
he
a
was
real
so
dude.
legit, and this thing's
Yeah.
like a little fairy thing.
Everybody's like, this is stupid. Why would you want to do this?
I usually thought of Martin Luther as like a pretty serious religious figure,
And then you heard this.
and then I heard this, and this is just stupid.
Mind
Exactly. So, but this is funny. So to this date, Christkind, the thing that I described, remains the main gift bringer in many Catholic countries in Latin America.
No.
Yeah, like that could have been like a truth or Santa,
Yeah.
right? Like, is there like a little fucking
Jesus fairy?
shit Jesus fairy that comes around and gives you your gifts? You would
Does he
have
have
been
like a magic wand and wings?
you would have been like, that is totally Santa. That's bullshit. But apparently, like in some places in Latin America, that's still around.
Wow.
I know.
Well, I mean, weird traditions, right?
Exactly. It's
Once
all about
again.
how he's marketed. So Saint Nick stayed around. Actually, Saint Nick survived.
Yep.
Survival of the fittest. Saint Nick survived. So then you had this thing, Sinterklaas or Father Christmas was different than Saint Nick, but he was the first divergence away from Saint Nick that was based on Saint Nick. So he wasn't Saint Nicholas,
Right.
but he was Father Christmas. So this was made later, and it sort of brings Santa away. Like it's a disambiguation away from religious
Yeah.
context, like
Yeah.
being Saint Nick, but it's still kind of based off him. Like if you look at a picture of him depicted, it still kind of looks like pictures of Saint Nick used to be. like red and
Red and
white.
Yeah.
And also around that time, the Germans had a winter festival called Yule in December, and Odin was said to fly through the sky around this time.
Oh, that's so fucking cool.
Yeah, in a
It's part
spirit.
of Norse mythology?
Yeah, it's part of Norse mythology.
Interesting.
So like Germanic, like Norse mythology, because I think that they believed in all of those gods at some point, like certain regions.
Yeah.
So they had some pretty crazy stories, and one of them was like during December, like after this harvest time, there would be spiritual hunts in the sky, and Odin would fly around at that time. So they say that the image of Father Christmas, which is based on Saint Nicholas, but it's not Christian, right? It's just about the holidays, merged with Odin, who like flies through the sky and has this big long white beard. So that's when Father Christmas gets this big long white beard. So all of these different cultures are kind of like merging together as they get less secular.
You sure about that? The whole like the beard thing? Because that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So I'll quote that in the future if that's like.
Well, when I was doing the research like late last night, they were
That was
pretty
one of the theories.
That was one of the theories. They were pretty
like
close to each other
Santa's beard
in like
comes from
Western Europe.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so yeah, in 1821, an anonymous poem called Old Santa Claus with Much Delight described Santa Claus on a reindeer sleigh bringing presents to children. So that was like the first sort of literature about modern Santa Claus in 1821. So this is a really, really old tradition. This is like a 200. I would say that like Santa Claus proper, like Odin,
Like Santa Claus.
Odin, Father Christmas, Santa Claus flying through the sky.
Yeah, the version that we know.
The version that we kind of
Basically,
know
yeah.
started 200 years ago. So it's like super, super recent.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if that's super. It depends on what scale you're thinking.
Yeah, I'm thinking
in terms
I often think in a pretty
like
large
Earth
scale.
history. Yeah. Okay. It's
Yeah.
not that old.
And shortly thereafter, 2 years later, in 1823, The Night Before Christmas was written. And that one is like a really famous one.
Yeah.
Where you start to talk about Saint Nick as being, it is Saint Nick. They are talking about Saint Nick.
Yep.
So they're making Saint Nick sort of not religious because it's not a religious poem at all.
No.
Right? So you use Saint Nick in like not a religious way, and you describe him as chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf. He's got a little round belly, and he shook like when he laughed. So basically, Santa Claus is just based on whatever you can rhyme with anything that like sounds fun to children.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So they made him really, really fat.
They made him into a cartoon character essentially.
Yeah. Well, he's kind of like
he's just silly.
he's kind of like a superhero.
He's a big fat superhero.
He's a big fat superhero. He is like Odin.
Yeah.
I think that the Odin, somebody told me recently.
The Odin parallel is actually, now that I think about it, is pretty.
It does kind of make sense,
there,
right?
yeah.
He was leading this hunt like through the sky, and he had like a big beard, and
Yeah.
maybe it had something to do with like gifts that were being given around that time.
Or maybe
So
when he killed the other gods or demons or whatever it was that he was killing, they just exploded and burst into gifts, and then gifts just went flying everywhere, and all the kids in the streets and
see, that would be better. You can totally.
they caught the gifts.
We can add that to the Santa lore because it's a rich history that just adds things on like over time.
We should totally do that.
Absolutely. Like there's some people that told me
Let's
recently.
edit Santa.
Let's see. Yeah, no. Santa is constantly edited over time, and somebody gave me this idea that because they used to hang shrooms, like as a reason
Like
for
magic
why
mushrooms or like
magic
just-
mushrooms
okay.
as a reason for why Santa flew through the sky, right?
Because he was high as fuck.
No, because people were drying their magic mushrooms on their evergreen trees, and then they ate them, and they were like,
They're like,
I
"Oh my God."
can see someone flying through the sky." But then I found the Odin thing, and I'm like,
That makes more sense.
it's probably based on that.
Yeah.
Although, I mean,
The
maybe
mushrooms thing is pretty good too.
maybe they were doing mushrooms, and that's how they came up with the Odin thing.
Possibly.
Yeah, it's all
It's all tied together, man.
interconnected.
Everything's
yeah,
linked.
Totally. So in 1845, Kris Kringle was a common variant of Santa in parts of the U.S. So this wasn't just in Europe. It was also in the U.S. 20 years after that poem was written. And then in 1850, there was an illustration of St. Nicholas with a black servant. So the black servants of St. Nicholas were still going on in 1850.
Maybe that was Swart Pete.
Yeah, what was his name?
Swart Pete.
Swark Pete.
Zwart?
Zwart?
Peat. Like Zwart is, I guess, their word for black.
Oh no, yeah, that is Zwart Pete.
It's
Yeah,
Black Pete.
this image is Zwart Pete.
Let me see.
So was he a slave?
Yeah, Black Pete was a slave, and he was liberated by Santa Claus. Actually.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was the story. And so he like helped Santa, but like of his own volition.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So he was kind of a hero as well. Like that's why it's like everybody who's in the Netherlands is kind of upset about having to give up this tradition just to be PC.
I wonder if this was before or after the Civil War in America.
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, somebody fact check that for us. So in 1889, we're going in chronological order here. A poet popularized Mrs. Claus in a poem called "Goody Santa Claus on a Sleigh Ride." Goody Santa Claus,
Goody Santa Claus
on a sleigh ride. It's like starring Mrs. Claus. Welcome up to the stage. So it's another. I just mentioned that because they just keep on adding characters in now.
Yeah.
Like as
and then
they
there's
go.
Rudolph, and then there's
Rudolph.
Frosty.
Yeah, no, Rudolph wasn't yet actually. Rudolph didn't come until I'm getting to Rudolph actually. So there's The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus was a 1902 children's book. It gave Santa a home, not in the North Pole, but in a place called the Laughing Valley of Ho-Ha-Ho. And he had 10 reindeer who couldn't fly, but they could jump really high,
Okay.
right? And
That helps to get on rooftops.
that was in 1902. And then in the 1930s, Coca-Cola started using Santa Claus in their ads, right?
Coke Santa.
So this is kind of like the Horus thing, because a lot of people seem to think that it's a common misconception. A lot of people seem to think that that Coca-Cola invented Santa Claus,
What?
but as you can see, like it's very progressive.
Yeah.
For a very long time. for, like-
Coca-Cola definitely used Santa Claus as a marketing tool, and they were kind of smart to do so.
they were very good at it.
Yeah.
But by this time, like I don't think that there's anything about Coke's depiction of Santa Claus that wasn't already invented at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like we invented Santa Claus.
So to give them credit for it then is almost just to give them more power.
Credit, more credit than they deserve,
Yeah.
for sure. Like listen up, guys. Coca-Cola didn't invent Santa Claus. Authors and poets who were trying to get laid invented Santa Claus.
That is like at the very least 93% true.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
I assume they were trying to get laid.